DC1, are you there this time?
I'm here. I'm always here.
You are. You are. Well, what a hectic week we've both had. Hectic days we've both had.
Busy.
Busy. Very busy. So we have a great topic today. Not only is it timely, but it's also important. It's always important. We have to make sure that we make that time, regardless of how busy we are, to continue this conversation of diversity and inclusion. And just so everybody knows, this didn't start with the George Floyd incident. This did not start because of anything that's going on right now. This has been something that's always been very important when we talk about diversity and inclusion, not just in America, but as we're talking about in our Navy and in our military. It's always, to me, it's always been at the top of one of the things we should strive for. So what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I feel like not only as America, but when we talk about wearing uniform right now, about our military, any branch, it's not only what makes our country great, but it's what makes, a part of making our nation great and our country great is our military and our service members and them as individuals as well. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic with our special guests that we have and to have an open discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my little bells and whistles, as you call it.
Yes, so, bells and whistles.
Yeah. So if you all are just tuning in with us, again, happy Friday. Thank you for being with us today. Please go ahead and share this content, like, subscribe, hit that little alert button so that way you don't miss out on any other future events that we have every Friday and we go on at the same time. And let us know where you're tuning in from, because we are live from Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and maybe even from your city or your state represent. We'd love to hear from where you're chiming in from. If you have any questions as we go along, we welcome them. Please feel free to type it in the comments section. We see them, we'll post them up, we'll read them. And if you can relate to anything or you hear something that's pretty good, or you're like, that's awesome, throw a thumbs up. Or what would you do, Master Chief? You say
I would put a boom, just like that.
Yes. So let us know. Thank you, Lamone, for tuning in with us, and Miss Melanie there so far.
Outstanding. So we have one more thing. We got to jag it up, right? So I'm going to throw it up there, and then it's over to you to make sure we're JAG official.
Okay. So viewers, if you love to follow along with me, feel free to. And if you are catching this video podcast later on because you weren't able to make it, I will read it out loud for you. So here we go. Please keep this in mind. The viewers presented herein are those of individual speakers and do not necessarily represent the official office of DoD, the Department of the Navy, or any command or unit within the world's greatest Navy.
Boom. That's a boom. What it means is we can be honest, and we're not trying to toe the line, but it's going to talk about diversity and inclusion today. Real quick, I want to go back to last week with CMC McBride again. Okay. Phenomenal show. She's a good woman, and she's a great Master Chief. Really, really loved that show. I went back and watched it. Very insightful. And I really appreciate her coming on, taking time out of her day again, just like our two special guests that we have today. So now, you know Lieutenant Sams very well.
Yes, I do.
You guys are like BFFs. What I'm starting to find is you have a lot of BFFs.
Don't tell them that, though.
Okay. All right. So the other thing is that most people won't know is that I taught Lieutenant Commander Machado everything he knows.
Wait, you two know each other?
Yes. So he was at the time, the division officer for the island nation of Puerto Rico down in NRD, Miami. I want to say it was the 2012-11 timeframe. He'll talk about it, I'm sure. But and I was running a division up in West Palm Beach. Good times.
What small world.
Yes. So we didn't get to see each other much, but the times we did get to see each other, I was very impactful in his career. At least that's what I tell myself.
Yeah. Well, so then you mentioned Lieutenant Commander. Let me mention a little bit about Lieutenant Sams. I met Lieutenant Sams when I first moved to Memphis, and I wanted to come into recruiting. And she had my package. HQ saw it, and they were like, "Hey, we could use you as a recruiter. Good to go. Go meet who you're going to work for." So I went over there, and she was was it CO or the OIC? She She was running it. I'm just going to say that. I showed up and I was like, I'm here for the position. And she looked at me and she went like this. What do you have to offer? What are you bringing to the table? Okay. That was my interpretation. She didn't use those words. I'm just saying like how it was perceived, right? People don't remember what you say. What did Fleet Beldo mention? That quote?
It's how you feel. How you feel.
Maya Angelou. People don't remember or won't remember exactly what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
So you felt like she was questioning your ability to be in the United States Navy.
Yeah, to be a recruiter.
There we go.
And then I talked to her, and now we're BFFs. And we've been working with each other in Recruiting Nation since October 2018.
I am not going to tell Fleet Beldo or CMC McBride that you are now besties with Lieutenant Sams.
Thank you. Because we're live.
Outstanding. So let me see. So Lieutenant Machado, 2013 to 2016. So we had maybe a little bit less than a year together because I left at the end of 2013. So, but no, I do remember him. He was a very impactful man, and I remember a lot of good things about him. So we could go on all day. Don't forget at the end, I can't tell you who we're going to have on. You saw the email traffic, I pray, right? You saw the email traffic today. It is not confirmed, but it's good.
No, and I forgot to tell you, our deputy PAO, she asked me a question. I'm not sure if she was able to reach out to you. I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance to respond because I've been in training all day, so I have not seen it yet.
Oh, well, it's not official, but it's big. So we're waiting on that. But that one is for September 11th, and it'll be really cool. It'll be really cool if that one comes through on September 11th. And then we have another one we're trying, but the individual is on vacation. How about that? We'll use vacation as that word. So we'll see. We'll kind of see how all that works out. But do stick around because we have our 2 cents. At least I have mine.
Yeah, I always have mine. Okay.
Well, we are ready with that. Anything we want to do before we bring these two in? Jeff Bayless is retiring on September 11th, the year of our Lord, 2020. So good stuff. Actually, it'll be, I think September 30th is the more factual date, I believe, because I think it has, is that your ceremony, Jeff, or is that?
Well, no, I think that's when he's retiring because I think he entered in, I believe it was his story that he came into the Navy around that time frame too. So he's leaving at that same time frame.
Nice. That'll be fun. So, all right, without further ado, we will bring in Lieutenant Commander Machado and Lieutenant Sams. So first, we'll go by rank. There's Lieutenant Commander Machado. Welcome aboard, sir. And there is Lieutenant Sams. Welcome aboard, ma'am.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, no, thank you guys for being here. Thank you also for taking time out of your very busy days. We know there's a lot going on in the world today, especially with including the diversity and inclusion aspect of the United States Navy and the United States in general. So I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to spend a little bit with us on a Friday afternoon, and our listeners, all 300,000 of them that we have tuned in. So no pressure, and it's live. So don't worry about what you say. It's just going to happen. Once it's left, it's gone. So no pressure. Well, welcome aboard. So if we could, we'll start with you, Lieutenant Commander Machado. We'll go in rank. Tell us just a little bit about yourself and what your position is in the Navy, sir.
Absolutely. Lieutenant Commander Rolando Machado Jr. I'm the son of Cuban exiles, born and raised in Miami, Florida. I went to the Naval Academy, graduated in 2009. I became a surface warfare officer. I'm currently the chief engineer of USS Vicksburg in Norfolk, Virginia. And I did some recruiting duty during my short time. This is a topic that's really important to me. I also wear a collateral hat as the Navy Service Representative for ANSO. ANSO is it's a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan professional development organization that serves as the leader resource group for Latinos and Hispanics in the maritime services, so Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine. We were founded in 1981 by the first and only Secretary of the Navy of Hispanic descent, the late Honorable Eduardo Hidalgo. And our mission is essentially to recruit, retain, and promote our members within the sea services to have the senior leadership, the Master Chiefs, Sergeants Majors, Admirals, and Generals that reflect the face of our diverse nation.
I was muted. Sometimes we'll make that mistake because we don't want to bust in while you're talking. But no, that's outstanding. And you know, if anybody has an opportunity, go look up the ANSO organization. It's a great organization. Look it up. Take some time and understand some of the work they did. I did not realize that was the you said Secretary of the Navy.
That's right.
So I did not know that. I'm going to look that up because I kind of like history and especially the firsts. So that's good.
Yeah.
So Lieutenant Sams, over to you, ma'am, and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well,
Okay, now you're good. You were muted, but you're good.
okay. Okay, so again, Lieutenant Sams, currently serving at Navy Recruiting Command in Millington, Tennessee, serving in N10 Outreach and Diversity. Some of my collaterals, I am actually the president of NNOA, who has a very similar mission to ANSO to recruit, promote, and retain officers in the sea service, increase diversity of officers in the sea service. So I'm the chapter president for Millington. I also serve as one of the senior advisors for our command multicultural committee. So, and I'm currently working with you, as you know, on Task Force One Navy. So those are some of the things I'm doing in my professional life to champion inclusion and diversity.
Well, outstanding. Well, welcome aboard to both of you. A lot of hard work, a lot of effort going into this. I'm super excited to have both of you here. As I know in DC1, I almost called you NC1 again. DC1 is, you know, this. I usually we're very scripted in our show. This one's going to be a little bit less unscripted, if you will, because of the topic and the back and forth that I think the questions, the answers, the ideas, and the thoughts need to be had. So I do want to give the other plug out to our listeners. Please, if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask. You know, somebody will be able to answer it or give you their thought process or their idea behind it. So please don't hesitate to reach out in our chat and let us know what you're thinking. And also, DC1, always on the spot, is already put up the links on YouTube and Facebook for ansomil.org and nnoa.org. So outstanding job to DC1, keeping everything up and running.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So
Yeah.
when you see the increase of traffic by millions today, it will be because of DC1 initiative. But that's good stuff. So I will start with the very simple question, and please play off of each other and both please comment. Why is diversity important?
So I'll go ahead and kick it off. I think diversity is important. The biggest reason is it's a competitive advantage for warfighting readiness. We look back recently, I think it was just a few days ago, we celebrated the Navajo Code Talkers, right? So these were Marines who used a different language to be able to communicate across the Pacific so that we could defeat the Japanese. And if we hadn't had that diversity in a very small group of people that were included in the fight, then we wouldn't have won. And so I think it's very important that we recognize that it is a competitive advantage. Our nation is one of the only nations in the world that welcomes so many different cultures to one place. And that makes it something that we can actually utilize and we can go execute our mission better than anybody else using our human capital.
Ma'am?
Yes. So, you know, similarly to what Lieutenant Commander is saying, is when you speak about diversity in an organization, you're referring to the initial recruitment and retention of the workforce to reflect the society that it exists and serves in. The true question is not just why diversity is important as a standalone factor, but why inclusion is important. Because you truly cannot address one without the other. So my response would be more to why inclusion is important to me as an individual and, in my opinion, to the organization. Inclusion is how an individual is made to feel when they're a part of the organization or in their workplace. So whether or not they feel as if they belong there. And diversity is important because, as Lieutenant Commander said, there's strength in diversity. There's strength in having diverse opinions. There's strength in having individuals from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, from different genders, different races, different parts of the country. Inclusion is important because those individuals can stay around and thrive and help make the organization itself a better place to work and exist and be.
I think that those two work together beautifully. And the way you put it, ma'am, and what Lieutenant Commander said is spot on. We get stronger in the inclusion aspect of keeping everybody together and allowing them to serve longer because they feel welcomed and they feel like they're part of the team because they truly are, not just making them feel that way. I would ask you this, though. There are some that may say inclusion is great, and it is. And there's some that may say, well, but this is the military, and this is the way it is. That's why we send you through RTC or through OCS or whatever the incoming school is, and we expect you to bend into or mold into what the military expectation is. So how would you all respond to somebody who had that type of thought process?
So what I think about when I think about situations like that, Navy culture is important, right? And we all have a Navy culture. But when you come into the military, you have to shed. You either have to shed or you have to change kind of how you act to fit the mold, right? Some of that is okay. The problem is when it becomes too much, right? And you cannot change an individual over a 3-month boot camp to just completely get rid of 18 years of how they grew up. And that's everything from the way they talk, the way they present themselves. If you're very passionate about something and you're in an environment where passion is great and it's lauded, and then you go to an environment where it can be perceived that you're excitable or you're not really in control of your emotions, well, now you have a negative perception that somebody is attributing to you, even though you were raised in a completely different environment. That passion may actually be one of the reasons why you can make bold decisions in a tactical situation that help you win a battle. But if we change people's behavior in a way that doesn't actually let them utilize what their own self advantages are, then what we end up doing is we actually make our force weaker. And I want to highlight something when we talk about diversity and inclusion. To me, and this is again my thought process, but diversity is a seat at the table, right? Inclusion is being comfortable enough to sharing your thoughts and having a voice that's willing, an ear that's willing to listen to what you've said, right? And both of them are mutually dependent. So if you don't have a diverse group of people sitting around a table, then you don't have any of the benefit of diversity, right? And if those people are diverse, but that environment is not inclusive, then again, you don't get the benefit. And so we talk about diversity improving decision-making, problem-solving, creativity, innovation, flexibility, all those things, like I've said, they're war-fighting necessities, right? As long as diversity and inclusion do not work together and they don't quite fit within whatever organization you're in, you're not going to be at the best. And that's what I think is very important as we continue to talk about.
Right. Again, I agree with what you're saying. I think the important thing to remember is, we are a 100% volunteer force. So we recruit individuals, or during the accession process of joining the Navy, that there is an expectation that you are going to go through a training pipeline and you're going to join an organization where your thought process is, as an individual, should still be respected, but there's a reflection of a uniform service, because that's what it is. The lexicon changes. Everyone talks the same. We use a million acronyms, and if you don't get on board and learn how to Navy, then you won't survive, let alone thrive. But there is a hazard in expecting an individual to, as Lieutenant Commander was referencing, lose themselves as an individual or even their cultural background just because they put this uniform on. I say that because if you do so, do you not lose the opportunity to possibly spot what makes that person as an individual great and what they have to offer as a leader or, you know, as a sailor out in fleet? And I am a very passionate person. My personal experience, I'll tell you, is that I am emboldened and I am passionate and I speak my mind. And oftentimes that is perceived, or I am told, and therefore, then I'm aggressive. When I was like, oh, well, to the left and right of me, those individuals were told they were assertive, and that is a respected and expected um, characteristic of a young leader. Uh, but coming from me, it's aggressive and it has negative connotations, and so therefore, that if you're not familiar, world out there, that's called a microaggression. That, you know, referring to an individual's characteristic traits in a negative way when the only difference between them and individuals to the left and right of them is the fact that I'm a woman or that I am a Black woman is a microaggression. And that's a workplace cultural flaw. That is something that is in the culture, in the climate of the workplace. Um, and I think it's not okay. It's not okay to say, oh, you're in the Navy and that's what you should expect. You should just blend or you should just fit in. Um, as Lieutenant Commander said, you cannot tell a whole group of people to assimilate in order to succeed. Uh, if you want to be successful here, play by these rules, play by this game, follow this playbook, and you'll be okay. Uh, that's also referred to as masking. That's exhausting. Having a whole different work persona when you come to work, or when you interact with the people that you have a seat at the table with. I've had a seat at the table with individuals and looked to the left and right and not felt as if my voice was heard. Or maybe I had to sit a little bit taller or speak a little bit louder just to make sure I was taken seriously. Um, but the masking, the whole energy it takes to completely change how you want to be perceived is exhausting. It is exhausting. And no one should have to do it in order to be taken seriously in the workforce, especially if they're just as qualified as the other individuals wearing the same rank to be successful.
Right, and then you go into the part where you have to, you know, sit a little taller and you have to speak a little louder, and now you're being aggressive, which leads back into
Exactly.
that's truly what happens. I've seen that as well myself, not necessarily for me because I, you know, I'm a part of the majority, and I understand that. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said if there's 4 people that look like me sitting in a room, nobody questions anything. But if we go in and there's 4 African Americans sitting in the room, people would question that. And I'm saying everybody, but I'm saying that's the type of environment that unfortunately does occur more often. I would say more often than not, maybe, but way too often in where we're at. And we have to take a very hard look at that. So how would you two recommend that we go about changing some of these, not just the microaggressions, but the inclusion aspect of the diversity, not just having a seat, but being able to have your voice heard and understanding. I think it was Steve Jobs who said, I didn't hire smart people so I could tell them what to do. I hire the smart people so they can tell me what to do. Well, if we want diversity of thought, which I'm a huge believer in, we talk about it on the show all the time. How do we change the culture? Not just in the Navy, but it could be any organization out there because it's not just us. How do we change that thought process and that culture of opening the aperture and saying, we want everybody to fall under these core values, if you will, right? This standardization of being respectful, being tactful, being professional in that environment that everybody is expected to have, but also being able to be your individual self and provide that diversity of thought to the team where it's accepted and taken on board. It's a long question. If you need me to repeat it, I will.
I like to think of it as we have to face the conflict up front. I think that's probably the hardest part. We as an organization need to understand, as a whole organization, regardless of what command you're at, you have to kind of look around and you have to make sure that everybody's going into it with genuine desire, right? So do you have a desire to be the best crew possible? Yes. Is everybody here, did they all volunteer to serve in the United States Navy and pay the price up to and including their life in order to do so? Yes. Okay, well then all of us already have a shared experience, right? And then if you start from that genuine point and something happens or somebody sees something that they're uncomfortable with, we have to then refer back to our core values, specifically courage, right? Moral courage, and say something about it. If you feel uncomfortable seeing somebody else being treated a certain way, you have to say something, because if you're feeling uncomfortable and you're not even in the situation, imagine how that other person feels. And so it's very important that we start off believing that we're all genuine about fixing this problem, and then we have to confront it and have conversations about it. And it isn't easy. It's not easy to talk about it. It's difficult. We've been seeing it within my own command. We've been doing focus groups and talking about racial equality, inclusivity. Those are tough conversations, and they're things that people are going to share with you that you may not have anticipated or understood. But that allows us to empathize with each other. And when we empathize with each other, we actually grow as a team and we can collaborate better. And again, it goes back to our ability to be better at resolving the mission and getting the job done. So I think the biggest thing is moral courage and kind of bringing up the conversation and having it.
I just want to say something really quick. One, I think thank you all for being here and discussing this topic, because it does take courage to actually talk about, to discuss something like this, right? And then, sir, I know that you have another meeting to go to. Are we keeping you on time? Did you have any final words? Did you need to log off in a minute?
No, I'm good for right now.
Okay, you just let us know anytime you have to head out. So thank you. And then I know that Lieutenant Sams is going to answer that question too. So whenever you do, I'm ready to put up a question that I think somebody has in regards to what you were just talking about.
Okay, very well. So just to answer your question, Master Chief, in my opinion, the answer is exactly what we're doing right now. Not just this forum, not just this podcast, although this is wonderful and is needed and warranted. But the conversations that we're having at the individual command levels, the conversations that we're having in our peer groups, the conversations that we're having with the people who don't look like us or think like us, and our willingness and our ability to try to positively influence other individuals who don't look like us or think like us. And the fact that in my opinion, for the first time since I've been serving, I feel like the senior level leadership all the way up in the Navy is encouraging that. They're promoting it. They're asking for it. And I know it's going to be more than simply saying that we're going to change a policy here or a policy there. It is definitely a cultural shift that has to happen. It's the individual climates at commands has to be addressed. And once people are honest with themselves, the fact that it's uncomfortable, my answer for that, for individuals who say, well, talking about race or talking about equity or talking about diversity and inclusion makes me uncomfortable. My answer would be, then keep talking about it. Keep talking about it until it's not uncomfortable, because it's expected when you check into a new command that your commander's expectations are passed down to you. And most of those are directly in alignment with overall Big Navy's expectations, that we treat others with respect, that you get individual training on sexual assault and harassment and responsible behavior constantly. It's a continual conversation that we have to acknowledge, that we understand that as individuals, we have to govern ourselves by those expectations. And that at some point in time, I'm sure made a lot of people uncomfortable. Now it's part of the culture that we serve in. And it's expected to have that ongoing conversation and training related to it. Same for suicide prevention and awareness. It's a conversation that to some degree may make individuals feel uncomfortable, but the Navy recognized that it's a real problem, it is a real issue, and they continue to have the training and the conversations, and they push them down to the deck plate levels, and they continue to support with policies at the senior levels. And that is the same type of energy, that is the same type of motivation and widespread reform that it's going to take across the organization when it comes to inclusiveness and equity.
Very, very good. Hey, DC1, we have a great question from Andrew Chen. Did you see that on the side? Or do you want me to pop it up?
I got it right here. I'm gonna start with the first one because it's like a two-part, and then
I think it's a great question, and it's probably what a lot of people are thinking.
Andrew Chin asked our panel, how do you tell the difference between a microaggression and a character area for development?
So I'll address this I'll give you a succinct answer. As a junior leader, when I first became commissioned, for those of you who don't know much about me, I started off enlisted, and then I earned my commission. So one of the first things I remember being taught in my leadership pipeline was perception is everything. Perception is reality. It does not necessarily matter to the sailors that I am serving what I intended for them to feel, what I meant to say, if my actions were not intended to be perceived a certain way. The reality is, if they perceived it that way, then I have to address that because that's the reality. So it's not necessarily for the person who says to you, what you said to me made me feel uncomfortable. What you said to me made me feel like you only targeted me because of my race or my gender. And for you to be like, I did not necessarily mean that, or because it's not about you. It's about the individual who was made to feel uncomfortable. It's about the individual who felt targeted. And that takes a lot to step outside of yourself as a leader and see that it's not about what you said or how you intended to come across. You may have been well-intentioned. However, then the challenge is for you to learn how to reapproach it, because it may be truly a time where you felt like, well, I truly just wanted to help you develop. Okay, then that's a learning opportunity for you as a leader, because you have to learn how to train and correct and develop all individuals. Even if that part of that individual is truly genuine to who that person is, then essentially you're saying to that individual, who you are is broken, or who you are is wrong, or who you are won't be successful unless you change it. So instead of saying that, maybe you have to look at a way to address it with that individual to say, I love how passionate you are, but sometimes it could simply come across as aggression. So have you ever considered maybe thinking about what you're going to say before you say it, or writing it down? Or have you ever thought about running it by a few people and seeing how they take it? You know, there's a way to do everything. It truly is. But if you've heard it from more than one person, or people are just honest and they speak up and say if they are comfortable with the way they have been addressed or treated, then that leader may have more of an opportunity to get genuine input and feedback from the people that they're serving.
Well said.
Yeah, I think Lieutenant Sams is on point. I definitely believe everything she said is it's a great way to put it. One additional thing that I'll add, I actually think it's a great reason to have affinity groups. I think it's a great reason to have an NOA, an ANSO, and all the other affinity groups, because what you can do with having coaches, right, and mentors that are part of an affinity group, if they have a shared background as you, or they have a different background than the majority group, then you can help ask that question and have somebody who's maybe been through the same thing you have and kind of address it. And that's something that you can't get with just a mentor that you get through your command, right? Because it's hard to distinguish. It's very hard to distinguish whether something is a microaggression or whether it's an area for improvement that is genuine or that is real. And the only way to kind of really understand whether it's a genuine concern or not is to maybe ask an outside objective viewpoint, preferably somebody who might have been through something similar as you, in order to resolve that, if that makes any sense.
It does. Thank you, sir. And I posted the piggybacking of from that question, as well as that person, Andrew's point of view, because he says that he is, has felt the same way as Lieutenant Sams had mentioned. So,
yeah, and I think I can say the same thing. When I was at the Naval Academy, I felt that question that he just asked, Andrew Chen, Asian American, Rolando Machado, Cuban American from Miami. I went through the same thing we did at the Naval Academy. So again, goes back to kind of why you need those coaches and mentors.
Right.
All right, good. That was and I can imagine, especially going somewhere like the Naval Academy, which is not a very diverse area. It's got to stick out a little bit more, and there are definitely ways that I've always said that a leader is responsible for how they make the sailor or the person feel. It's our job to learn how to communicate with our sailors. Right. They're young. Some of these kids, they're 17, 18. I get in trouble for saying that. But I'm old. So, some of these young men and women, they're so young and they're still learning and they're still growing. So it's our job as a leader to learn how to communicate the correct way with them. We have to take that as leaders every single day. And we do have another question I want to get to real quick, because I know Lieutenant Commander is going to run here shortly. And this one is specifically for you, sir. So NC1 or DC1, do you have that up? There we go. It's a long question.
It is. So NC1 Rosado from actually New England, she says, question is for Lieutenant Commander. Back in March of this year, Military Officers Association of America wrote an article, DOD needing to do more to recruit and grow Hispanic American officers and lack therefore. When junior Hispanic American military members look to the top, we fail to see adequate representation of our ethnicity. What are some of yours and would you say the ANSO's recommendation for a possible solution?
So I think this goes back to Navy culture and tradition. So I think what's really important is you have to be able to see kind of the role models and the positions in order for you to kind of visualize yourself there. I mean, I think that's very important. For me, it's been important. But what we actually need to do is we need to reinforce that throughout the entire Navy, right? And so, the Navy's first Vice Admiral and first full Admiral was Admiral David Glasgow Farragut, right? One of our battle cries within the Navy was "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," right? And he was the hero of the Battle of Mobile Bay, right? And yet, little known fact, he, like many of our sailors in the United States Navy, his father was Spanish. And I think it's one of those things where we get caught up in that, but then we don't connect how that connects to us, right? So he's one example. Admiral Horacio Rivera Jr. is another great example. He was a native Puerto Rican, class of 1933, graduated number 3 of 441 people at the Naval Academy, and he made it to 4-star rank. And even more recently, Rear Admiral Yvette Davis. She just had her change command. She just started a new job, but she just finished being the first Latina in command of a carrier striker, right? I think what's really important as a Navy is that we see those examples of leadership serving at the highest levels, and we have to share that. ANSO has a responsibility, in my opinion, to be that voice, to continue to reinforce, hey, Admiral Farragut, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, Hispanic. Admiral Rivera, Vice Chief of Naval Operations during Vietnam, Hispanic. The first Latina in command of carrier striker, Rear Admiral Yvette Davis. She's still in the Navy, going up, on her way, right? We need to be able to highlight that. If you don't highlight that, then our sailors don't see it. They don't feel like the organization is for them because they don't see somebody that's similar to them. And then it makes it difficult. I think NC1's question is on point. I think it's very important that you stress that. I actually think this is a good segue for one of the books that I was talking about. But I'll let DC1 let me know when we bring that up.
I will also say this. That's a boom statement right there, and it's important. I didn't know, and I like history. I didn't know that Admiral Farragut was Hispanic. Had no clue. That is, I don't know. I've read his bio. I don't believe it was in there. I agree that we need to celebrate diverse people that have been in the Navy, that have done great things, so people can see it. And when you talk about the human psyche, it's important to hear things, to see things, to be able to put yourself in those positions and understand that if that person can do it, I can too, regardless of your upbringing and your background. And that goes back to some of the socioeconomic things that Lieutenant Sam was talking about. Just because you're born poor in a situation where you're born, there's always a way to get somewhere, but we have to show people how that path and how to get there. So if you don't visualize or you can't auditorily hear how somebody has made that that transformation from one place to another, it's really difficult. So I agree with you 100%. We have to see that, not just in print, but being celebrated. So great answer. And NC1, great question from Intag New England, as always.
Yeah, NC1 Rosado.
So good stuff. So do we want to go ahead and bring in the books right now, DC1? Do you want to do that?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. But also to add to our earlier discussion, we were talking about boot camp, and some may have that perception of I got to change who I am, where I come from in order to fit in. I think it goes both ways. It goes from the individual itself. Just know that you don't have to completely lose yourself into your identity and who you are and where you come from, and continue to come into the Navy and yet hold up those expectations with the honor core commitment and those values and learn your job. So it's almost like, and I see it as learning another language. Right? You don't have to leave or lose your language. Still practice it, still express it, still be proud of who you are and where you come from, but as well as take on these other tools, these other skills that you will help you throughout your Navy career. So. All right, let's talk about literature. Are we ready?
Always ready.
Where do we want to start?
Let's go. All right, so Hispanic military heroes, Virgil Fernandez. This man was a sailor on USS Saratoga during Vietnam, and then he wrote a book, and what he did was he collected a lot of the stories of Latino Americans and what they've done, right? So there's a section in here, the first section of the book talks about Medal of Honor recipients. And then it talks about, it moves on into kind of those senior leadership, Admiral Rivero, Vice Admiral Diego Hernandez, great people that we can look at. Lieutenant General Pedro Del Valle, U.S. Marine Corps, who was one of the heroes of Guadalcanal. Very important to understand that and then share it. I think this is why it's a great book recommendation. Do you want me to go to my second book?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get your books out of the way, and then we'll move to the young Lieutenant Sams.
All right, so this one's not military oriented, but it was written by a researcher who's very big on tracking how senior executives are doing within corporate America that are of Latino background. And so it's called Auténtico, The Definitive Guide to Latino Career Success, right? Dr. Robert Rodriguez and Andres Tomas Tapia. This book has really helped me because what it's done is it's allowed me to kind of first identify Latinos within the Navy. There's a lot of different types of Latinos, right? There are Latinos that are very comfortable speaking Spanish. There are Latinos that are second or third generation American that are not comfortable speaking Spanish. There's Latinos that have a last name that's Latino, Latinos that don't, right? And so it's very important that we kind of understand what that difference looks like, and what the different kind of microaggressions could be happening around you as a result. The other thing it kind of talks about is kind of the background of Latin American society, and some of the unconscious biases that an individual might be dealing with their own bicultural identity that they have to deal with when they go into a large organization in order to surpass that, And so for me, it's been really, really beneficial. And I think going back to Authentico, the big piece about that, we've seen a lot of research in leadership over recent years about how people read into whether someone is 100% authentic or not. And if you are a more authentic leader, or you are more of a leader based on who you are as an individual, then what ends up happening is people respect, trust you more, and you have greater influence. Well, if in the process of changing to fit the Navy culture, you lose that authenticity, well, then what ends up happening is you lose some of your ability to lead. And so it's very important to understand that, because you can't dilute it too much. You have to dilute it enough, right, where you fit into Navy culture, but you can't do it so much that you lose what makes you a competitive advantage as a leader within the Navy.
Right. I think Lieutenant Sams referred to that as when you put on the mask, you pretend to be something, and how tiring it is. So I definitely understand that. I think it's a fair point across the board. That, and I hope everybody got that answer when I asked the question of, we expect them to fit in this mold of the military. And what we're talking about is the discipline, the tact, things along those lines, but not losing who the person is, and losing what the advantages they bring to the Navy are. So I think I'm going to try to say it authentico. I'm pretty sure I nailed it. So with that, all right, ma'am, do you have any books or recommendations for books for leadership?
You know, I not necessarily any books with a historical read for you, but a good friend of mine, Lieutenant Christina Johns Williams, just recently wrote an article for the U.S. Naval Institute. It's actually titled "What Does Inclusion Look Like?" and it talks more about that masking. In her article, she refers to it as code breaking. I encourage everyone to read it. It was recently published last week. So there was a question, or there was this question of, how do you talk to other people about inclusion? What can leaders who are maybe not necessarily non-diverse leaders do to get more empathetic, or to develop their empathy, or to develop their knowledge based on inclusion from the perspective of someone who doesn't necessarily look like them? And my answer would be to listen to them. If they have a voice or a platform, which she was fortunate to have a platform, then familiarize yourself with them and read them. So I would suggest that.
That's awesome, and is in true fashion. DC1 already has it up there, and I will say this: you used the word multiple times today, ma'am, of empathy, and I think that might be a lost art of at times we want to go too far and be sympathetic, and that's not really what I think the human spirit wants. They don't want you to feel sympathy for them;
Right.
they just want you to understand, and that's more along. So if you don't know what empathy is, please take a few minutes, read some books or some small articles about empathy, and kind of understand what that means. And I'm excited to read this from your friend. And so that'll be good. And I'm going to put that out to the command once I read it, and they give it to not required reading, because we don't do that, but recommended reading as we go down the inclusion pathway in our command. So that's outstanding. I look forward to reading that. So we do love quotes here. I've already stole one quote for the day. So my quote was I stole the mangled quote from Steve Jobs of, "We hire smart people to tell us what to do." I mangled it and messed it up, but it's okay. So do either of you two have just a quote that it doesn't need to be towards diversity or inclusion, but it can, by all means can be, that you think is a good quote for leadership in general, or for diversity and inclusion?
I think on topic, the quote that I would probably use is, authenticity is at the heart of success. It's actually an anonymous quote. If we are referencing the value and the importance of being inclusive, of being an inclusive organization, and also allowing individuals to find strength and provide strength to said organization based on being able to be their authentic self, then that's the quote that I would reference.
Say it again. Authenticity
is at the heart of success.
is at the heart of success. And that goes back to what Lieutenant Commander was saying with Authentico. If once you lose that, it's gone. I think I nailed the word again. I am not good with foreign languages, by the way. Absolutely wretched. I tried when I was younger and I failed miserably. So I tried French and Spanish and I was horrible. I think I remember Amarillo and La Mesa. The table is yellow or something along those lines. I think that's all I got. And La Bibliothèque for French. So, all right, Lieutenant Commander, over to you, sir.
Yeah, I think this one's a little bit long, but it's kind of a leadership quote that I've always liked. So it's by, I believe, an author named Eugene Habecker. To lead is to serve the people, serve their best interests, and in so doing, you may not always be popular, you may not always impress, but because true leaders are motivated by love and concern rather than the desire for personal glory, they're willing to pay the price. So I'll send it to you in the private chat so you can show it.
I don't think DC one's that fast. She may be. She may already have it. We'll see. But that's good. True
I
leadership
tried.
is about people, and you're not always going to make popular decisions, but they're the right decisions, and we have to go forward with it. So, what I will do real quick is, I don't think we have any questions right now. So what I'd like to do is give both of you an opportunity, and we'll start with you, Lieutenant Sams, this time, and give you an opportunity to kind of address the crowd and talk about diversity, inclusion, and things that you find important and that you want to get out to not just the Navy, but anybody that could be listening. So we'll go on mute and let you go, man.
Okay, well, thank you. I feel like I covered a lot of it with the questions that we were, the back and forth question and answer. However, I will say this. I will say that growing up as a young girl, where I'm from, I'm also from Florida, embedded in the education that I received alongside the intellectual education, there was a development of tolerance that was taught in the school system, and it was expected. I also would say that I suppose I had the fortune of being brought up in a, not to be divisive, but a religious household. So there's this moral compass that was instilled based on a Christian upbringing. So there's parts that I feel are gapped and missing. I don't know if it's from the society we live in overall, if we become callous to the plight of humankind and go down this narrow rabbit hole of self-concern only for ourselves or for those who think and look and vote and worship like us. But I weep a bit at it. It's dangerous and it's sad. And those are the things that are concerning in a society. And those are the things that have no place to be reflected in our Navy. Decisive natures, we cannot be divided to be after one mission, one fight. We have to be able to collaborate. Everyone should feel safe. Everyone should feel welcome. And that is the things that I'm working towards in the groups and organizations and the old task force and groups that somehow I found myself assigned to or volunteering for. Inclusion is everyone's responsibility. Inclusion is not just the responsibility of the individuals who want to be included. If it's simply about doing what is right for everyone, regardless of if it's the popular opinion or not. Just as Lieutenant Commander was saying, it was one of his favorite quotes. Nothing great was ever accomplished by just doing what was popular or just doing what the masses thought was popular. By all means, doing the right thing is always a lot harder than just doing the popular thing. And so I would like to definitely see more courage and more leaders being willing to do the right thing than simply the popular thing. and the individuals in our service, I think, will be grateful for it, and that organizational change that we're hoping to see will follow.
I love that, especially the courage part. And one of your statements when you talked about the divisiveness, I think to myself, as we have these social media platforms that is actually bringing the world together in communication, but their algorithms on how they say what content you're going to see, based off of your own beliefs or what you've searched, continues to feed your own, I guess I'll just say brain housing group, but it continues to feed your own personal beliefs. So you never get to understand the other side. So I'm wondering if the devices that we've created that were actually meant to bring us together have divided us even more. And I know that we don't have an answer for that, but it's just when you were talking about that, I thought about the morality of before we had this connection to the world through the World Wide Web and everything else. It didn't seem as divided, or maybe we're seeing it more because it's more. So I guess it's chicken egg thing, but nonetheless, now I'm going to be thinking about that all night. Thank you, ma'am. But that was very poignant and on point with having the moral courage and ability to do the right thing as a leader and not the politically correct or safe thing or popular thing. And that's, I think that, like you said, you feel now that the senior leaders in the Navy are starting to, I guess, see that and recognize that and push it out and how that's making you feel as a human being. And I think that's important that we continue that fight forward and continue to have these types of conversations. So thank you so much for that, ma'am. Very poignant. Sir.
Yeah, so I think as we wrap this up, at least my opinion on diversity and inclusion, I think probably the biggest thing we really need right now, more than anything, is that we need senior leadership to continue to beat the drum on this. Because if senior leadership stops, right, and we get sidetracked by something, right, unfortunately, what's going to end up happening is it's going to be like it's been before, where we talk about diversity and inclusion and it's great, but what we really need to be seeing is we need to be seeing mentors from all walks of life reaching down to make sure that there are people getting lined up 10 and 15 years down the road to be successful as the next McPawn or the next, 4-star. I talked about Admiral Rivero earlier, but it's actually been 48 years. This year is 48 years since he retired. So he retired from the Navy as a 4-star admiral in 1972. Okay, and since then there hasn't been another Latino 4-star admiral. Yet in that time, the number of Latino sailors has increased, almost exponentially. And so we have to really look at that, because if we don't recognize that is a consequence of a structural problem that we haven't yet figured out what it is, right? So you may have a leaking roof, and the roof is leaking, but you may not know where or what the issue is with the roof. But the thing that you clearly see is that there's water on the deck, right? And so that's the thing we need to get after. We need to continue to talk about that. And diversity and inclusion, it starts on the deck plate. It starts with our conversations, this conversation, getting it out on social media, within our affinity groups. It starts within our peer groups, whether it's the first class mess, chief's mess, the wardroom, right? It starts there, but it can't end there, right? It has to end, not end, but it has to continue with senior leaders reaching down and mentoring people way junior than them to make sure that they are on the right path and getting the right jobs and getting the doors open, because you can be fantastic and phenomenal, but if you don't have the right job at the right time with the right people asking for you to have it, unfortunately, you're not going to make it past a certain point. There's just a natural ceiling. Unfortunately, we're not a pure meritocracy. There's a networking piece, and we can't lose sight of that, right? We like focusing on the meritocracy piece, but there is a network. And so we as leaders have a responsibility to build that network, but then the senior leaders also have a responsibility to advocate for those people that are fighting for themselves, right? So that's how I wanted to wrap up.
I love the idea of a meritocracy. And I wish it was a meritocracy and everything was taken out of it, and how you performed was the decision maker of how you moved. But like you said, sir, there's a connection piece, a political maze, if you will, of how you move up, and it's unfortunate. But I do find it interesting. I think you said 44 years since the four-star admiral retired. And we have increased exponentially over the last 44 years, not just with Hispanics, but with APIs, with African Americans across the board. Yet we still find ourselves in the area where you're trying to look up to see where you could be, and we just don't have it. And it's frustrating from my standpoint. So I couldn't imagine from somebody else's standpoint that is looking for that person and saying, where do I go? And DC1 and I had an offline conversation about those types of things just the other day, of being able to see myself in a certain environment. If you can't see yourself there, you start to doubt whether you're ever going to be able to get there, or if you're good enough to get there. And that plays a huge part in your psyche. So very, very great conversation with, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Master Chief, I got a great quote. This is from Harvard Business Review. This was a really, really good issue. It was July to August 2016. And the quote is by Dr. Linda Burrell in an article called "We Just Can't Handle Diversity." Seeing is believing. That is, we need to actually see counter stereotypical examples if we are to change our minds. We need behavioral designs to make it easier for our biased minds to get things right and break the link between our gut reactions and our actions, right? So when we talk about Admiral Rivero and SecNav Hidalgo and Vice Admiral Hernandez and Rear Admiral Davids, right? Why we need to talk about those is because if we can't break the stereotype that Latinos, for example, are really hard workers, but they're not leaders, then we're not going to be able to let our junior sailors and our junior officers see themselves getting to the Master Chief, right? Fleet Master Chief, MCPON level, or the JOs looking at themselves and seeing themselves as commanding officers and admirals, right? And if we don't do that, that's one piece, that's one part of it. But then the other part is those advocates that we're asking for. Won't see somebody that's similar to the individual that they're looking at in their psyche. And so it works both ways. So I felt that was a very important quote. I'm sorry that I kind of added back in.
No, it's good, especially with I'm thinking we're going to do hashtag seeing is believing. So
yes, let's do it.
Really simple hashtag, but it's a fact. And I think that goes a lot towards not just the diversity part, but like Lieutenant Sams brought up and you brought up, the inclusion part. Because if we see it, it becomes who we are, it becomes what we are. It becomes, and I hate to use this word, but it becomes more acceptable, right? The more we see it, the more acceptable it becomes. And it just sounds bad to say that. I feel bad saying it becomes more acceptable, but I do believe that's the right word. So real quick before both of you go, Raphael Barney said, Barney, I think is how you say it. I'm going to make it up. Admiral Michelle Howard brought up this lack of representation at the top years ago at a symposium for ANSO and NNOA, and spoke how cross-fertilization was the only way to move forward, and there were no mentors she could look for that looked like her. Mentoring is the key to success as we continue to raise up our sea service family, and that's poignant. And you know, since she's retired, I don't know who else to kind of go look at as well. And the same thing with people like Fleet Meldo. So as they leave, who's their replacement? Who's coming in behind that? So outstanding.
After Admiral, I mean, there's only been, for me, I'm a young African-American female. There's only been 3. There has only been 3 in the history of our Navy, African-American female admirals. So she is one of 3. And I think back to when I first came to Navy recruiting, and it's strange to me how I did not know that I was literally standing in the presence of greatness when I first met Admiral Annie Andrews. And I don't know if it just hadn't been fully, I just couldn't fully realize that she was one of three right there in front of me. And I just, but she's so personable. She was a wonderful commander to work for. And then when I was like, oh, and they were like, there's only been 3 African American female admirals. And then you think about it, you're like, there has only been 3. So you talk about looking to the top and looking for where you can aspire to see yourself one day. 3 out of how many admirals the Navy has made since the history of the Navy, that is, we're talking about minute numbers. And all 3 women were astounding in their own right, but only 3.
So then we're here today where we're at, still wondering why. Still
Right.
trying to find that magic, that secret to success to make sure that it's equitable across the board for everybody. And there's the
But
fair
I mean, we're not even talking about the flag ranks, Master Chief. I mean, if you look past the 04 ranks in the officer communities, then the inclusiveness, the reflection of yourself, it starts to go down. I've had ward rooms now, and I can say often, you join that ward room and you look around, and there isn't really anyone else there that looks like you, and that's commonplace. The advocacy, the mentorship that you need in order to succeed in your career, it often just comes from allies, people who believe in you and support you, and but they don't necessarily look like you. Some of my best mentors have been white males, but they've been individuals that took the time to get to know me personally and invest in my career. Maybe they were former COs, or somehow had the opportunity to see me lead as a young JO, or whatever the case may be. But I definitely have not yet had the opportunity to check into a command and to have, other than the one very rare occasion, have access to a senior African American female officer and seek them out for mentorship or some sort of career advice or anything like that. But that's where organizations like ANSO and NNOA come into play. And since becoming involved with the affinity organization NNOA, definitely I've had more opportunities to meet individuals I otherwise never would have met in my career. So I'm grateful for that.
Outstanding. Well, we are running against the clock. It's been our longest show to date, which is good. And it's good. And I will say this, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I have not done this before, but I would ask you guys on air, if you ever want to come back, please let us know, and we'll be glad to have you back almost any time, unless we have another guest already lined up for that week. But no, we'd love to have you back, because I think this is a conversation that maybe we could go down just specifically down the African American route one time, maybe the Hispanic route one time, and talk about the different obstacles that may be in the way on each of those. So I appreciate you both very much. Thank you all. Have a blessed day. DC1.
Yes. Again, also what Master Chief just mentioned, that thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your insights, your experiences on this topic that we don't talk enough about. So I hope that all of our viewers out there that are listening, thank you again also for you joining us. And we hope that you've been able to get something of value or insight as well for yourself during this show. Please feel free to share with others that you think that this would be of any value also to them. But again, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you guys have an amazing Friday and weekend. To our guest, it was such a pleasure to see you here on this panel.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I was very happy to be here. So thank you.
Me too. It was great.
Thank you both so much. And we'll put you in the background now. Feel free to stay for the after party.
Or if you have to go, we understand too.
Exactly. All right. Wow. What a great show. What a great show. DC1, you came out of nowhere to bring that on a couple days ago. We were hoping to have some things in.
Oh,
What
yeah.
a great guest, and talk about understanding. I don't want to say the mission, but understanding the mission of what diversity inclusion is. Just like they should be paid. They should be paid more than they're being paid. Let's put it that way.
They were amazing.
That's hard to say for an 04 because he makes a lot of money. That dude's right.
Yes.
And the 03E, don't let the 03E confuse you either.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
They should be paid more. That was phenomenal topic of conversation. And I hope everybody who is listening in the future takes something away from it. And, I will say that Kelly Ramirez said the quietest. There weren't a lot of comments, not because it wasn't good, but I, again, am starting to fall into the DC1 trap.
If you're new or you're just tuning in, this is what he's talking about. This is me during every show because I could not help it. I selfishly feel like I have the best seat in the house, that front row ticket during the Super Bowl, because this is me during a show. You may not be able to see it physically, but this is me.
You're like the third string quarterback on a Super Bowl team. You know you're not getting it, but you're just sitting there on the end of the bench.
And I appreciate you for filling in because I'm the one that usually puts up the quotes and everything, but I was trying to find some of them and I couldn't find it. And I think because I was like,
best guest ever. No, but great guest, Lieutenant Commander Machado. Whatever he said, he put in the little private chat Yahoo thingy we got over here. So I copied it and pasted it. So that's where it was.
I was looking for the private chat. There it is.
That was on the Lieutenant Commander.
He's on it. That was the first time our guest has ever done that.
I know. I didn't even know when I saw it pop up. I'm like, oh no, we did something bad. That's Jag. And then I went over here. He told me how many years we were in Miami together and stuff like that. So
wow.
Good stuff. So great guest, really. And I meant what I said. Anytime they want to come back, that was. And I think maybe a one-on-one conversation would be better in the future. Although they were great together and they played off each other very well. I think there's different obstacles for different things, and I think that maybe it's important that we get each of them on individually. And really, anybody who wants to have that conversation. So really good stuff. Super show. Really good. Like we could probably sell this one. Jag, I'm kidding. We're not selling it. But I tell you what, if you're any organization, I'm not just talking about the United States Navy. If you're any organization, you want to know about diversity and inclusion, just have that conversation. Watch this show. Share it with people that you have, because it's not about the Navy specifically. This is a problem, not just here, but everywhere. And it needs to be discussed, needs to be talked about. So boom, we didn't do bells and whistles. We didn't do the check-ins like we were supposed to. Like there's a time limit. I watched the YouTube.
I know.
Everybody throw some booms, do some stuff. Like, subscribe, share. Sharing is caring.
I think because we wanted this to, and this is also, again, one of our longest shows. It's just a lot of good information, content, and insights, and everything that our guests has shared with us going back and forth, that we didn't have enough time or see it fitting to kind of, hey guys, hold on. Go ahead and like and subscribe.
Yeah, let's stop talking about the really important subject. Hit a bell and whistle. Yeah. So good stuff. Let's do the pennies. I don't remember who went first last time. Do you care?
I do not.
Okay, I will go, if you don't mind.
I do not.
And this goes back a little bit to what Lieutenant Sams was talking about, and assertiveness and aggressiveness and things like that. So what I hear a lot of people say is, no, you need to be A, you need to be B, you need to be C, and you need to go in there and you need to pound on the table and you need to scream and yell. And I've always thought that advice was comical. And the reason I think it's comical is there is a time to pound on the table, right? There is a time to walk into, whether it's an officer, and I'll say like me as the chief recruiter, there's a time for me to walk into the CO's office, shut the door, and have a very frank, open conversation with him.
Sure.
But if I battle people on everything on what I think is right, number one, people stop listening.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a time for the table pounding per se, but it is not every time. So my advice, my penny's worth of thought is this: if the other person's idea is not destructive to another human being or the command, and you can understand the path they're taking, it's not a table pounding moment. It's a disagreement, a philosophical disagreement. If the other person's decision is going to destroy a human being or the command or the mission or whatever the case is, that's when you need to reserve the table pounding, so to speak. So be open to understanding. I think somebody put it on here too. Be open to understanding of others' inputs and ideas and thoughts. And you don't have to be overly aggressive when somebody doesn't listen to you, because your opinion is just that. But if you know it's going to harm another human being or it's going to harm the command or the mission in one way, you have to pound on that table, and you have to make it blatantly clear that you're not okay with what's happening. And you have to be able to explain that as to why. So that's my penny is
Okay.
Don't overreact. Don't be too aggressive on everything. And the time for it will present itself. But if you do it every time, nobody's ever going to listen to you. That's me.
Makes me think about my kids. All right, so we're talking about 2 cents. That's your 1 cent. I'm going to go ahead and give mine. So earlier throughout the week, I contacted you in regards to this whole topic. We went back and forth. It was a great conversation, which led to this week's topic as well. So it's crazy that all of a sudden, out of the blue, somebody that I'm friends with on Facebook, I'm reading through the threads, and I don't know this person personally, but I saw something that made me really sad for this person and just overall where this person is sitting at. So it's a young sailor just joined the Navy on a ship, and he's explaining, and he puts this on his personal page on Facebook. I wish people could understand me. And he kind of even cursed on there too, because he's so frustrated. He's explaining how he's at work, and because he's quiet doesn't mean that he's dumb. It just English is his second language, and it's hard for him to pick up on things so fast that he says that he's 70% understanding of what's really going on, what people are talking about when we move so fast in the Navy and trying to get the mission or the job or whatever it is the task is at hand, right? So he's saying, like, I know that you guys see me out there, and he's referring to his shipmates. You guys see me out there, and I might be quiet most of the time, but I'm as smart. I'm way smarter than you are, because I know not only just one language, but 2 languages, and I know this job. So if I'm sitting here quiet and I'm doing this job, doesn't mean that I'm dumb. Stop treating me and talking to me like I'm slow, like I'm dumb, like I'm ignorant. And I know you're just looking at me like this dumb young sailor doesn't know anything. He can't even understand us. So I felt really bad when I read that post, and I see his family members commenting and saying, hey, keep your head up. It's okay. And others will say, oh, forget them. You don't need them. But really, my 2 cents on that whole thing is, I think when we talk about diversity and inclusion, what's really important as leadership, and not just when we say leadership, we're not specifically saying you have to have this high title position, but you as an individual as a sailor, whatever rank you are a leader as well. We are all leaders inside or outside of this military, right? You can hold that position or that title. But if you, as that person that's a shipmate working with sailors like that, we talked about being empathetic. Listen to other people's stories and where they come from so that you can work better together and more efficiently together. But all it takes is somebody to let them understand and know if they're having a hard time in that type of situation. Like, listen to their story, their background, where they come from. There's some sort of connection that you will have, and you'll find that you have with them as well. But I think we do need to be more empathetic and learning each other's stories. I think that's going to be an important part with the whole diversity and inclusion. So that's just my 1 cent for the 2 cents today.
Your penny was phenomenal. Nothing short of that was great. And it was, I was talking about it earlier. I tried to learn a second language. I did. I tried to learn Spanish, and I'm horrible. I am bad.
Una cerveza, please.
And I tried French because I thought maybe it would be different. It was horrible. Total and complete massive failure in both. If somebody's main language is Spanish, let's just use that as the one, and English is their second language, I agree with you. We need to be empathetic. We need to be patient. We need to find a way as a leader to communicate with them. And I feel bad I don't feel bad for the kid. What I feel bad is for the situation he's in. And I wish I could have a conversation with his shipmates and the people that are and say, you know what, you need to help and you need to find a different way to communicate, because that's incumbent on you as a leader. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. So if you're listening and you're on that ship with that young sailor, or you're that young sailor listening, and you need some help, by all means, reach out to DC1, myself, anybody else. And we've got to be more than happy to kind of help you get through that. But I'm telling you, we need to do a better job as humans. And Lieutenant Sams talked about that too. We need to do better jobs in humanity of understanding different things. So,
Yeah.
and
people,
understanding, people operate. And, the Navy throughout time will weed out the ones that can't do the job. That's going to happen. We shouldn't make it harder on somebody else because we don't understand them. And that's the almost cursed, and I didn't. That's the bad part of it, is when we weed somebody out because we don't understand them, and that's not okay. So
Yeah.
That's me adding on to your penny, which was a great penny.
No, I appreciate that.
Right, mine was corroded, sitting in a
No, absolutely.
So great stuff. All right, so we do not have confirmation for next week or the 11th. The 4th we will be off. I'm calling it now, DC1. So the 4th will be off. God willing, I'll be moving into my house that week, and God willing. So we'll see what happens. But outside of that, another great show. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
But you're the lifeblood. You're the heart. You're the brains. Really, I'm like the appendix. I'm there. Nobody really knows what I do. I get on here and I do some of this. But you make it, and I could not be more appreciative of what you do week in and week out to make sure that the leadership within continues to move forward. And I would say this: if Lieutenant Sams wants to take my place at the end,
I'll let her know.
all right.
Yeah. Oh, and then did you see Chief Ramirez?
Yes.
Very cool. They're all.
Lots of thoughts. It is a great. You don't even know, and you work hard. You work really hard. And we know the Navy's a great choice to get out of different socioeconomic backgrounds, right? And to change who we are in that aspect. Like I told everybody, I was a single mom, 3 kids, almost dirt floor poor, but we actually had a real floor. But the Navy provided me the opportunity to get out of that, right? And it provides a lot of people that opportunity on the socioeconomics aspect. But we need to do better with the inclusion and the diversity aspect. So let's move forward and let's think together. Let's talk together, and let's just be gooder together. I didn't say gooder yet today. I felt like I had to drop it. Great conversation. Thank you again to Lieutenant Sams, Lieutenant Commander Machado. Thank you to you, DC1, as always.
And thank you to you, and thank you to our viewers. It's been a pleasure this Friday.
Like, subscribe, share, do your thing. There we go. And we are out.